Welcome back, everybody. I'm Brandon, and this is Brandon Burning Food. And tonight I have a new recipe for y'all: grilled London broil. It's a I came across this about a year or so ago online, and I've given it a shot a couple of times. It's a really good, kind of unconventional way of preparing something that almost everybody's familiar with. London broil is great for weeknight meals as it's pretty cheap for what you get. It doesn't really take that long to cook. You got to marinate and you got to prep it, but it's really a pretty easy, straightforward dish for like a Wednesday night or something like that. And if you know what you're doing, it comes out great. So let's get to it. Okay, guys. So here I am with the London broil, and as you can see, again, this is a pretty big cut of meat. Much larger than my hand. And one of the things we need to do before we marinate this is tenderize it a bit, because the grill method, it doesn't really allow for slow cooking, which is normally what you do when you have a tough piece of meat and you want to make it tender. You cook it slowly, which breaks down the connective tissue within the cut. But because we don't have a lot of time to cook it, what we're going to do is we're going to use this thing called a jacquard. And what this is looks like a stamp, but in the inside is just a bunch of little blades. And we're just going to kind of stamp this all the way down, like so. And this is going to break down a bunch of the connective tissue within the meat for us. And also, it's going to allow the marinade to penetrate a lot further and deeper into the meat, which is going to create a better flavor. So there we go. We've got it pretty good in jacquarded or stamped or whatever you want to call it. If you have one of these, don't overdo it with this thing because it'll just chop it into nothing, because these are blades. Alternatively, if you don't have one of these, one thing you can use in place of it if you want to do this is a fork. Just stab it repeatedly over and over and over again. It takes longer and it's more of a pain, but it gets the same job done. And now what we're going to do is we are going to put the marinade together, which is the second part of tenderizing this cut, because the marinade is going to contain vinegar, which is going to, as it marinates, it's going to break down the connective tissue even more thanks to the jacquard. So I'll get the marinade ingredients together and I'll be right back. So for the marinade, we're going to base it with Sticky Fingers Carolina Classic barbecue sauce. If you're familiar with Carolina barbecue, typically it's honestly just a vinegar barbecue sauce. This is a little thicker, but I like it a lot and it makes for a great marinade. It's tangy, it's a little sweet, it's got a little briny flavor to it from the vinegar that's already in it. And then we're going to combine that with just a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Balsamic vinegar is a very common ingredient in London broil marinades. The chief reason for that being the way the flavors mesh with each other, as well as the fact that vinegar tenderizes beef. So again, this, thanks to the jacquard that we did before, is going to penetrate into the meat and it's going to break down even more of that connective tissue, so we can cook it more like a steak rather than a roast, which is kind of how London broil needs to be done, is just a severe sear on the outside and then kind of cook it a little slow so it breaks down. This way, we're going to kind of speed up that process. So, actually I haven't opened this yet, which I should have done before I started filming, but oh well. A knife, be careful if you do this. Give it a little nick. And the measurements for this, you don't want to use a lot of the vinegar. There's already vinegar in the sauce, like I said. So really, I use about a cup of sauce to about a tablespoon or so of vinegar. I went a little overboard there, but it will. Sink. And then I just eyeball it right about there. And you can use whatever to stir. I really wouldn't recommend a spoon. A whisk or a fork does just fine. And be gentle so you don't spill over the sides. I should have used a bigger bowl. Oh well. Almost like you're scrambling eggs. You can really smell that vinegar in there. One good thing about London broil is, like I said before a few times, it's a pretty big cut of meat. So it's pretty hard to over-season unless you just kill it with salt. So I think we've got that good and incorporated right there. And we're going to put this off to the side. Put that right there. Bring this up. And now I'm going to salt, pepper, and garlic powder this, just like I do with every other cut of beef that I cook. Those three things, I call them the trinity of seasoning. It works well with almost everything. So I'm going to do that off camera because, I mean, you don't really need to see me put salt, pepper, and garlic powder on something. And then we'll be back when everything is salt, peppered, garlic powdered, and marinated, and I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll go on from there. And after about 2.5 hours, I went a little longer than I initially said I would, just because of a few things that I had going on around my house. But after about 2.5 hours in the marinade, this is what our London broil looks like. You'll notice a little bit of graying on the top. That's normal. The vinegar is going to do that. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean that it's gone bad or anything like that. It just means that it's a little gray on top. You won't notice after it's cooked. We're going to let this sit for a few minutes at room temperature, exposed to the air on the plate, while the grill finishes heating up and getting where it needs to be before we throw it on there, and I'll be back then. Alright, so we got a fire ready to go. What you're looking for here is a little bit of, like, the flames seem to be really down near the coals and not licking up at the grate anymore is what you're looking for. And as you'll notice, we have an direct and indirect fire going. You want hot one side, cold the other for this. So here we go. I got the London broil right here, and we're just gonna layer on the hot side of the fire. Wasn't a great first shot, but come on, I'm trying to get it more centered over. These tongs aren't great. We'll scoot it. There we go, perfect. Got a nice sizzle going. And we're just gonna let this go for about 3 minutes per side. Turned off the light so y'all could see just the glow of the fire and the flames licking up from the bottom. That's what you want to see on the bottom of the London broil. Just kissing the bottom, getting a nice good sear going while it's on. I haven't flipped it yet, but this is looking exactly like I want it to look. All right, now for the flip. Good on the underside, and bam. And look at that, that's exactly what we're looking for. Some good charring, some browning, a nice crust built up on top. Yes, this is exactly what we want. Adjust it a little bit, get the other thing, come on. Usually don't struggle this much. All right, there we go. All right, and another 3 minutes on this side, and we will be back when we transfer it. And here we are, we've got 3 minutes per side, and I'm just gonna flip it real quick to show it. That is pretty much exactly what we want to see, especially because this side is going to be what stays down. Now we've got it on the cold side of the grill. And there's two things we got to do. Number one, close the lid, and you're going to cut your vent fan down to about half. And here we have our finished London broil, fresh off the grill. Looks fantastic, got nice char on it. The barbecue sauce and the balsamic vinegar caramelized really well, gave it kind of a glaze. It reached the internal temperature that I wanted it to reach. I used an instant read thermometer. You can use a normal meat thermometer, although it's not quite as accurate. And if you're good with the touch method, i.e. press on it, see how firm it is in certain spots, that'll tell you approximately how done it is. This one seems about perfect. I learned the touch method from my dad growing up, and that seems great. The great thing about London broil and the great thing about this recipe is that it kind of cooks differently throughout the cut of meat. It's thicker in parts and thinner in parts, so if you're feeding a group, and you have certain people who like their beef, say, medium well, and some who like it medium or medium rare, you can work that in with this. I wouldn't recommend trying to go more than 2 temperature differences apart, because that's going to be really difficult or impossible. But anyway, we've got this done, and now we need to do one of the most important things that you can do with beef when it's done cooking, is rest it covered. So we're going to wrap it in foil, just like this. It doesn't need to be super tight, and it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be covered, and we're going to let it sit on the counter, covered in foil, for about 10 minutes. What this does is it allows the beef to reabsorb its own juices that it kind of let loose while it was cooking. If you cut into it right now, all of those juices are going to come out, and you're going to end up with dry meat. All right, everybody, here's time for the moment of truth. We've had it resting for about 10 minutes now. Let's cut her open. And again, you want to cut across the grain, usually over the width of the London broil. And here we go. And that's a beautiful pink on the inside. Thanks to my fiance for the horn noises that we just heard. But yeah, that's perfect, and it accurately sums up exactly what we were looking for. Nice and pink. Not too red, not too gray. Everything looks fantastic. It smells wonderful. And let me just oh, there we go. Good slice there. That's what you're looking for, that sag right there. Where it falls down just a little, but not too much. It's not too droopy. Yes, exactly. And you know, I don't normally do this on my channel, but that's fantastic. Got the right amount of tang, the right amount of barbecue sauce, salt, everything. The texture is wonderful. I can't wait to dig into this. But as I chew and swallow on camera, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope you figured out you can do something pretty awesome with a cheaper cut of meat like London broil, or rather top round, as I was saying earlier. And I hope all of you have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to get back to you. And y'all have a wonderful day. Happy cooking, happy grilling.